Hello and what is up YouTube? It is IG3Iron, your balding bearded buddy, back to talk some more Path of Exile here with you today. And the first thing I have to do is introduce you to a new show format that we're going to do here today. We're going to introduce you to a couple different topics. We're going to chat topical stuff. That's right, late night talk show hosts are back. Larry King is dead, and they invited me to take over. That's right, CNN and Fox News both rang me up apparently to take over, and they only want me to talk about Path of Exile whenever we talk together. So that's what we're going to be doing. Anyway, all memes aside, we are going to essentially take a look at a couple of different topics that people are talking about relating to Path of Exile. And sometimes we'll have gameplay going on in the background, and sometimes we'll chat about the multiple different topics that are going on here over the last, I don't know, day to week or so. I don't have a name for the show yet, so far we're just calling it like Around Wraeclast, and maybe we need a new name. Maybe we need to hire somebody from marketing. Maybe we need somebody with an Australian accent to come up with some marketing for our late night talk show sort of style of host. But anyway, all that being said, the first topic that I want to get to today, and I'm not married to a certain number of topics. We don't need to make it 5 or 10 or even 3 or 1, but today, the first topic that we need to talk about is Slippery Jim. I've got a bone to pick with you, Jim. I love you, Jim. Jim, you're amazing. First off, when I wake up in the day, the first voice that I hear in my head is, all right, what's today? Today I'm going to farm 100 things. I'm going to farm 100 things. I'm going to run around. I'm going to try and farm some things. I'm going to click some things. I'm going to do all the things. I'm going to farm 100 maps. I'm going to do 100 chores. I'm going to do 100 dishes. And then I'm going to ID them. And I'm going to tell people about the 100 dishes that I've ID'd today. That's a slight homage to Jim, because I love Slippery Jim, ladies and gentlemen. He's the best of the best. He is the OG and the refined taste. He's like a fine wine. He's like a beer that has become a fine wine. At first you drink it and you're like, I'm not sure I really like this. And then the more you drink it, the more you recognize and appreciate the hue and the crest and the head that is Slippery Jim. Anyway, Jim made a video recently, and it's about what I'm doing here in the background, which is, of course, farming elders. And, of course, by the time the airing of the show has happened, of course, all of the economic impacts of all of the videos will have already been done and said and gone. But, oh, the elder is able to strangle me. We'll see if he kills me this time. Oh, just shy there, elder. Sorry, buddy. Anyway, I've been farming elder since basically almost a week. Since like Tuesday? Is that enough of a thing? And yes, I'm still dying, by the way. But usually I only use one portal. It's usually during the first phase of the elder that I've noticed that I die the most. It's pretty much just either he siphons you and slams you, or slams you and then siphons you. And anyway, wouldn't it be hilarious if I died again? Here, kill me again. I just said I only use one portal. Oh, okay. Anyway, Jim made a video. He made a video right as I had switched, like 3 days after I switched. Since Tuesday I was like, all right, I think my build can handle just doing elders. And more importantly than my build doing elders, I think I can handle doing elders. And my build is, by the way, animate weapon. It's beautiful build, change of commands. Shout out to Rusai. What a great build. Absolutely excellent recommendations. Thumbs up all the way for the content that it takes on and for the way how it's presented. Really, really super duper helpful. I've pretty much just been farming blights for the most part, blights and harvest through most of the league. And so I thought last Tuesday, I was like, all right, I'm going to try something different. Last league, I had done pretty much cast when stun chieftain and E-Miracles build. Beautiful build. I had pretty much just AFK'd in the simulacrum. And besides that, I had done a summoner because I'm a lazy summoner player and I always play summoners. Dating all the way back to pre-metamorph and like betrayal, pre-betrayal, essence league, all that good stuff. I like having an undead army that goes out and does PvE things for me. Well, to bring this all to a succinct conclusion, I was farming perfectly happily, and making all sorts of currency, and sinking that currency into other builds and other items and other investments that I was having fun with. And then Jim made this video. And Jim, because you made the video, I want to say, the day that you made the video, well, I'll show it here on screen, like the dramatic price difference that you can see when Jim releases a video. So that was just fun. That was just fun. I know it's long been called the Mathel effect or the streamer effect or whatever, but Jim, shout out to you, Jim, because you're the best. You're tremendous. Someday I hope I can in some way sit in the presence of your stream of conscious approach to life, and maybe we'll go on a stroll together through your garden that you've showed us over the years, or I forget what it is that different people throughout the world garden, lawn, farm. Anyway, someday maybe we'll have that level of fellowship, that level of kinship, but not today. Today I'm just griping because the farm that I was enjoying, I'm still enjoying it. Let's be honest. I'm still enjoying it. This is what I'm doing because I'm sick of blight maps for the moment. I've done so many blight maps. Too many blight maps. All right, on to the next topic. That's how we're going to transition here today. That's how we're going to transition to the show. Hard-hitting show, just like Larry King Live. We just transition from one topic to the next. So here's the next topic. The next topic is a pretty simple topic. It's called, what are the coolest off-meta builds this league? And this was a great question that was asked, by the way, by one of our friends over on Path of Exile Builds, the subreddit that's actually good for Path of Exile. The main subreddit is fine as well. Occasionally, I'll pull discussions that I think are interesting from the main subreddit, from the /r Path of Exile subreddit. But the vast majority of the time, where I actually hang out, in fact, I think I can show this to you on my phone. We'll see if it actually pulls up. When I go to create a new Google tab on my phone, that's right. Look at this. Just look. Will it show up? Yeah, will it show up? Look at this. It says Facebook page not found, and then the second most clicked one is this one that says Path of Exile. And when I click on it, it goes to Path of Exile Builds. That's like literally the second most website that I spend the most time on. And Facebook I have to be on for work and for some other things. So anyway, I say that to say the Path of Exile subreddit build, the Path of Exile Builds subreddit is a fantastic place to go. And the topic that was brought up was, what are the coolest off-meta builds this league? And I think there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them that are super duper fun. Pretty much at this point in the game state, I'm going to die here. In the game state of where we're at with POE, I think in terms of the meta, in terms of the options of what you could play, if you want to play, why am I even caring about dying here? It doesn't matter. I don't care about death. I have all the passives I need. Anyway, the game state is in such a good state. And this is what I mean by good state. Okay? What I mean by good state is you can pick a lot of different skills and scale them to the moon and have all sorts of different economic viability of those builds. There's going to be expensive builds. There's always going to be expensive builds. There's always going to be a meta. There's always going to, as long as there is the internet where people can share information and compete and show off what's good, what's not, or even just showcase styles that are available. There's always going to be like sheep, which follow the meta, and there's always going to be trendsetters and meta makers and those sorts of things. But there's also the opportunity for there to be off-meta builds. And there's always going to be off-meta builds, right? There's always going to be sheep who are following mainstream builds. And then there's always going to be people who say, no, I don't want to do that. I want to do my own thing. I'm a snowflake, right? There's sheep and there's snowflakes. But just because those two realities exist along a long and longly strewn out spectrum, that doesn't always mean that a game's going to be healthy. You're always going to have people on opposite ends of a spectrum. You're always going to have something of a spectrum in terms of your players and what they're choosing to do in whatever game it is that you are playing, whatever game it is that you've created, whatever game that you're hosting, whatever game you're watching. But a healthy game, a game that has health, a game that is robust in what it offers to its players, will offer diversity in both extremes. Diversity in terms of you've got lots of options of what you can play that could be meta or that are meta. And then you've also got diversity in what you can be if you want to be a snowflake. And then there's diversity everywhere in between. Okay. And where we're at right now with POE is we are at a spot. By the way, the show doesn't have a big enough budget. Apparently Larry King, when he died, he took the budget with him. So the show, when they called me up and asked me to do the show, I just said yes without asking them a budget for the chair. So my hydraulics on my chair are constantly coming down, and that's why you constantly get these special close-ups of my forehead. Oh, look at that, a prismatic jewel. That's great. Maybe I need to rub my forehead more, and more prismatic jewels will drop. Actually, I had a run of about 6 encounters in a row of 6 Watcher's Eye that dropped for me in a row. Anyway, here's some of the answers of what people are saying about the coolest off-meta builds. So, off-meta builds, their presence is a good thing. All right, that's my point. Their presence is a good thing for the game. I think it's a state of health when these sorts of discussions, which come up every single league, by the way, every single league, about 2 to 3 to 4 weeks into the league, somebody will say, hey, what's the cool off-meta build? Like, the meta has kind of emerged about what people are playing. What a shocker for this league, right? That mostly it's wanders, right? But once a meta has emerged, that then means an off-meta can also emerge. And lots of players want to play what's off-meta, and lots of players are curious about what other players are playing in that off-meta space. So, here's what a couple of people are saying. A random Karu says, you can literally put your wildest dreams on a golem stacking elementalist. It feels like and is able to clear 95% of the game. Just have fun with it. Off-meta in the sense of skills, not ascendancy, so take it with a grain of salt, right? Elementalist is still very much meta in terms of the percentages there on the screen you can see. But in terms of the skill choice, not a lot of players probably came into this league thinking, yes, I'm definitely going to play a Golem-mentalist. And that's one of the things that has emerged as being really, really strong this league, so it's quite fun. Another answer from Electronic Box 2065. He's a time traveler, apparently, coming back to us in 2025. Thank you so much. Electronic Box, can you tell us who wins the World Cup, by the way, throughout the 2030s? If you could just give us the answer to that at some point, that'd be great. Electronic Box says, I was playing a replica Alberon's Warpath strength stacking heavy strike of Trathus staff Juggernaut. Is that not off meta enough for you? I mean, on the one hand, it's really not off meta. It's a strength stacking jug. On the other hand, it's pretty off meta because the tools that you're going to use as a strength stacker or accuracy stacker jug are not necessarily going to go down this particular path that Electronic Box recommends. He says, I had max block, max spell block, 9,000 HP, 10 million DPS, 84% max res, basically screen clear with multiple non-vol skills attacking an additional enemy. That's pretty cool. That's through the craft system that's available due to the Keepers League. Very fast attack speed and 250k effective HP. I believe that's 2 prismatic jewels now in a row, so that's pretty cool. Basically, very tanky and pretty respectable damage. The build zooms through maps too because of the fast attack speed and pretty big range and AoE. All right, couple other real quick ones here, and then we'll wrap up this particular topic. Don't know how off meta it is, but playing a mana int strength stacking Mjolnir hero, which is fun. And then the response to this from Crack Shooter, haha, sweet summer child. That build has been meta since about Necropolis or so. You can see how meta it is based on Indigan suddenly being expensive week 1, where good rolls cost double digits now. The Mjolnir, Forbidden Flesh Jewel, Righteous Providence costs 150 div or more every league. Now, here's what I want to say. I'll just show the numbers here really quick. I don't think that this qualifies quite as being like a meta definer. It is a well-known build, and it's a well-known enough build now by this point. I feel like the archetype is almost like saying, I don't know, I'm going to play a minion build, right? Like there's enough mana stackers that are out there that kind of have a core shell to the build or a core archetype to the build, a bone structure to the build that you can pretty much identify and throw in a couple of particulars. It's a little bit like what we were just saying a moment ago with strength stacking. Like strength stacking is a build, mana stacking is a build, and depending on the patch and depending on the league and depending on the mechanisms that are available to us as players, there's different ways to scale that kind of archetype with it. And really, each league and each patch is just an iteration on that primary skeletal shell of the build. Okay, one last comment here on this topic. Just waiting, says Rooflet, just waiting for someone to find a good all-arounder ward build using 3 nodes of the ward bloodline ascendancy, but I start to lose hope. Tyson says, you can do the usual ward stack Night Grip shenanigans and use the 15% bypass, then either of the 5% restore or the 20% increased restoration per hit recently combined with kinetic fusillade and achieve over 100 hits a second to proc them almost indefinitely. And Guala actually shares Waggle's version of the ward stacking with Night Grip, which seems to be absurdly tanky. And that link, as well as all of the links to all of our discussion, are going to be down below in the video description. Another topic that we need to take on today, besides me rambling about Slippery Jim and fawning all over Slippery Jim, is async trade. This post is by Rainbow Plague and says, I know I'm not the only one to share this thought, but holy heck, async trade is the best thing to happen to the game in a long time. In the past, I'd be starting to burn out around this point in the league, but now, instead of burning out, I can easily get crafting bases without finding a bulk seller or whispering 20 people per base till I get a response. I can actually play the game instead of being on call to sell things. Not having the constant interruptions is fantastic. By the way, that to me is the biggest thing that I would echo about asynchronous trade. I used to use remote desktop logins in order to access Path of Exile for trading purposes while I was away from my computer, whether that was inside my house or out and about. I would log into POE, so that way I was there and would have active trade listings and would have to actually trade with people then by trying to like scroll onto my phone and get the mouse to do the thing and then get it to click. And sometimes it would use the 2-finger thing and the 1-finger thing. And anyway, don't have to do that anymore. Don't have to do that anymore. By the way, I've got another video coming up on that exact topic about how stash tabs have actually changed the way how you should organize your stash tabs. And it actually re-establishes or completely revolutionizes the way that we should actually use our item filters, but more on that later. Third thing that Rainbow Plague says in this post, I can throw everything up for sale before I go to bed and get a daily login bonus. Oh no, don't use that term. That's really, really bad. It's not a login bonus because you're not incentivized for logging in a particular time, but I know what you're saying. When you log in, it's a dopamine hit because there's stuff waiting for you there. So I'm with you on that, but there's no timetable on you logging in to get that stuff. When I log in the next day, thanks you to everybody who play while North America is sleeping. Yes, big shout out. This is a worldwide played game. It's one of the things that I love about Path of Exile. I love when I go onto YouTube and I look up a build guide and someone doesn't sound like or look like me and they're explaining Path of Exile. That's really cool because a lot of the time it means that I'm getting exposed to the way how other people think or speak or even introduce topics. It's really cool. I've learned a lot, not just from watching other people who are native English speakers or native Westerners, native North Americans, or people who just live in North America for the time and how they present games and how they talk about games and how they think about games, but I've actually learned a ton from people who aren't necessarily from my corner of the world, my small section of the world, and how they think about and approach the game. Next thing he says is, I'm more willing to make multiple characters and builds because the barrier to entry is a lot lower. Here's where I will disagree. I agree that that willingness is there, but for me, I'm trying to be more mature and not spam new builds this league. I'm trying to just hone in on a couple of builds and really dive into those. But you're right, it is tough, and it does take some mental resistance to do that because there's so much currency that's available. There's so many crafting options that's available. As soon as people start posting guides and make it a regular thing, by the way, let's make this a regular thing. When you post a build guide, include a crafting section in your build about how you specifically would like to actually go about crafting the things for your build. Like the materials that are needed. You don't have to put the ratios, you don't have to put the numbers, you don't have to put the currency, but like it's a pretty standardized thing nowadays for every player to say what is a rough estimate for the build and for the cost. Usually that's based off of whatever the previous league was in terms of the cost for uniques and costs for crafting rares. Sometimes people use Craft of Exile and other sorts of tools in order to showcase, hey, this is sort of what the cost is going to be roughly based off of last league's estimates. But it'd be great if we could standardize small sections. It could be a minute, it could be 45 minutes, built into YouTube guides and forum guides and postings and POBs, saying this is the step-by-step way that you go about crafting these particular things. Here's the Delve way to do it, or here's the Beast way to do it, or here's the Essence way to do it, or here's the Graph Tree way to do it. That would be super duper cool if that would become normalized inside the community. Last thing he points out, I love it about asynchronous trade when I'm idling in my hideout and a buyer pops in, just like what just happened. It's almost like that was queued up, but it wasn't queued up. I don't know that player. I can't even pronounce that player. Is that Chinese or Korean? I want to say that's Korean. I think that's Korean. Somebody correct me down below in the comments. Is that player's name Korean or Chinese? I think those are Korean characters, but I could be wrong. I love it when I'm idling in my hideout and a buyer pops in. Seeing the message of them joining my hideout is a nice little dopamine hit. Now, I guess that's a little bit different than what we were talking about. We're talking about like when you're actually sitting in your hideout and somebody doesn't message you and they just walk over to Faustus. That's really fun. But I've actually found myself enjoying those interactions with players more, the players who actually come to my Stash Tab and trade that are like live searches and live trades, which again, we're going to talk about here in a future upcoming video about the difference between having live offline searches, doing the instant buyout option versus trading with players, and how that is actually reshaping the way how the Path of Exile economy works, because people typically pay a premium for convenience. Faustus is that convenience, but you have to pay not only an upcharge maybe in the price of the items themselves, but you also have to pay an upcharge in terms of the gold that is exchanged. I have done some massive trades throughout this league that have come where people have essentially messaged me based off of a live search, Faustus listed item and said, hey, I don't have the gold to buy that. That is a great interactive player-to-player communicative practice to use. Like if you don't want to use your gold on this massive trade to just PM somebody, maybe they're not going to pick you up on it. Maybe that's why they put it in Faustus in the first place, but maybe they will because it's a significantly large transaction, and so a player's willing to do it even if it's not going to cost the gold. So it's pretty interesting to see all this. So with all that said, async trade has kept me playing the game longer. That's the opinion of this player. What about for you? Speaking of playing the game longer, here's one particular image that's been posted for discussion about the retention of players in Keepers League. And every single league, this is a huge complaint. Every single league, people are whining and saying, hey, at this week, at this day, this is the number of players, and it's used as a validation for some complaint. And I'm going to be the old man, bald head, beard guy screaming at the kids to get off my lawn on this point. I have seen this trope, and I have seen this play, and I'm just letting you know, I as a player am getting kind of sick of it. All right. Now you might be saying, well, G3 Iron, why are you talking about it then on the new show? Okay, because the network and Larry King wanted me to chat about it. And so I got to chat about some things that the network wants me to chat about. Okay. Besides for the fact that GGG also looks at these numbers and knows way more about these numbers than you and I do. These numbers unto themselves are not the basis of a good argument, persuasive to any extent, to say, as these numbers get trotted out every single league for the last decade, because the numbers this week are slightly lower than previous leagues. GGG, why won't you buff and spend any time buffing this current league? And there's all sorts of differences and distinctions about what buffing a league would look like, what it would actually mean to help player retention. And, it's really, really interesting, but you can pretty much look at percentages of players, and you can look at total numbers of players, which is another number that you can use here. You can look at the total number of players based off of Twitch and based off of Twitter and based off of YouTube figures and all sorts of all this deeper analysis on all sorts of websites to take a look at things, which I'm showing here above my slightly balding forehead and in the background. Like, you can do all of this sorts of number crunching to make an argument about more players or less players or more retention or less retention. GGG ultimately is the one, as a company, who has to care about those numbers, the numbers that matter to them as a company. We as players, we don't always know that information. I am a huge advocate for Path of Exile 1. If you have ever been around me and heard me talk about Path of Exile 2, I am not happy about it. I'm not happy about the way how it was announced versus the way how it actually is. I'm not happy about the way how the company has been restructured from Grinding Gear Games. Like, I think that there's a lot of really great, talented people that have probably had massive life changes throughout this whole POE 1 to POE 2, I won't call it fiasco, but release. I appreciate that the company, Grinding Gear Games, has the right to make whatever game they would like. I'm not pushing back on that. I'm just saying, as a POE 1 player, I don't appreciate POE 2 at all. That being said, a whole bunch of us that might say POE 2 is a flop, that's up to the business to decide. That's up to the investors to decide. If it's still a money-making business proposition, then there's still going to be new content that comes out. There's still going to be players. There's still going to be all that sort of stuff. For us as players, what we need to evaluate is less these numbers, like legitimately, less Steam chart, less whatever other numbers you want to pull. Like, We need to evaluate these numbers less and put less stock into this. For your game developers that are reading your comments, your short comments, right? Not biographies, but just really quick bingo card complaints. The more compelling thing, and GGG has responded to some of this stuff in the past. They've got a great track record and a great history of interacting with the community for more than a decade as a company. GGG is way more persuaded by you as an individual player posting on Reddit, making a video, submitting a forum post, and simply saying, I don't like this about keepers, and then laying out your argument there, rather than trying to convince them as a company that because of a graph, they need to listen to your suggestions about balance changes. It really puts you as somebody who's trying to make an advocacy argument for your own position. It actually starts you off in a really, really weak, persuasive position, because the thing that you're offering up as a persuasive piece of evidence to the person you're trying to persuade is the opposite of persuasive. They've got so much more data that is not necessarily correlated to the data that you've got. So like offering up the player numbers and concurrent player numbers that are public and available to us versus what the company's got, it's not a persuasive way to go about convincing GGG to either buff or nerf or rework or pay more attention to. It's just not. I get that sometimes we just want to vent and be frustrated. That's fine. But if we're talking about player retention numbers, there's so many other factors that go into this. Players who have already left the league, generally speaking, you can track this. You can do the numbers on the publicly available things. People don't come back. There's not like a massive wave of players who return to Path of Exile after a league has been launched. So players who try to really simply say, well, look at these numbers. Oh, but look at these numbers, GGG. Your retention rate is really low, and if you would just, at the 3rd week mark, do this extra thing, you'd actually see more players stick around. No, you won't see that. That would require a second hype train cycle that builds people up to say, and in 3 weeks, we're doing this. GGG doesn't do that. That's not a part of our ethos together as a community of gamers that play Path of Exile. To say, hey, get excited for this one release that comes every quarter, and then also get excited for a patch release that's going to come 3 weeks into it. That is so counter to the entire ethos and practice of Grinding Gear Games and Path of Exile as a game, and to the games as a service model. It makes no sense. From a marketing standpoint, we know player retention numbers. You can do the research on this. Player retention is based off of player exposure from their first exposure to the game. Okay, it's just a very, very simple, realistic statement. The more numbers you have playing the game at first, the more retention that you have in general. And so what companies try to do inside the gaming sphere is they try and get lots and lots of players. It's why they pay content creators left and right huge sums of money. We're talking Fortnite and whatever other AAA or quadruple A games are coming out. And you'll see all sorts of people playing it all of a sudden over a weekend, and then nobody's playing it a day later. Nobody on Twitch, nobody on YouTube. It's like this wave that just comes through, and it's like, wait, if there's actually passion for that game and people who wanted to continue playing that game, they'd be paying it. No, there's no passion for that game. There was just people being paid to play it, to advertise that game, to get the number of players up for the most amount of peak amount of players at a concurrent period of time. And that's what drives retention and ongoing sales and ongoing in-game purchases. And so you don't see, for games as a service or games for sale, you do not see like sales or big release and then a second big wave of players coming in that can surpass that concurrent number, or that can even get close to that current number. Once a player puts down a game, that game in that player's mind is probably gone. This goes back to a great quote from Chris Wilson. God rest his soul. He's still working. He's still live. He's got his own YouTube channel, which is awesome. Love listening to Chris as well. But God rest his soul as an employee and founder of Grinding Gear Games. He used to say, once you get to maps, if you get to maps as a player, we have your soul, right? That used to be a meme. That used to be a quote. Maybe you're new to the Path of Exile scene and you don't know that quote. But that quote matters for us as Path of Exile players, and it matters for Grinding Gear Games as a company. They're not interested in seeing a retention bump 3 weeks into the league. They're interested in massive player counts once a quarter and based off of their sales reports once a quarter as a business, hitting those marks, and then continuing and repeating that process in the next quarter. And if you look at these numbers and you can spread it out over the course of the lifetime of Path of Exile, you can see this is not just an accidental random thing. This is actually continued pretty sustained growth for the most part, except, when POE 2 comes around and players are like, what happened to my POE 1 and where's the content and why aren't there leagues and why are you disrupting the 4 leagues a year sort of schedule and all that sorts of stuff. So with that as a caveat, in general, concurrent player counts and larger player counts matter more than trying to retain a smaller percentage of players through a tiny buff or through a tiny change. The other last thing that I'll say on this is when you're trying to make persuasive arguments about like what a gaming company needs to do with their game, like, hey, here's the evidence. The evidence is you're not retaining players. Therefore, you need to nerf this, or therefore you need to buff this. If you really genuinely think that that's what the game needs to do, you need to do your homework and check to see, is that a part of the pattern of this game developer? Like, is that a thing? Is that in their ethos? It's probably not because nobody's ever mentioned it before. It's probably because this is not a part of their business model. This is probably not a part of their community building model. It's probably not a part of who they are as a company to do those sorts of things. And so when you try and bring a persuasive argument, you need to bring something that's actually genuinely persuasive. So here's what I would encourage you to do. If you think that you have a suggestion for GGG that would positively impact the game, right? You're a player, you're saying, hey, I think it's more fun when this happens. Use fun as a descriptive measurement of what you're enjoying or not. Okay, and you can bring up retained players into that discussion. But when you bring that up as your primary evidence, we don't know why X number of players have left a league, and it becomes so arbitrary, you can start manipulating and using those numbers all sorts of ways. You as an individual player, just you, your beard, your balding, expanding forehead, just you and your glasses, just you and your whatever it is you're wearing or not wearing, whatever it is, you need to then make a compelling case based off of your experience, off of what you have experienced in the league. So instead of saying something like, well, Keepers has got super terrible retention, what you could say instead is, I'm not playing Keepers as much as other leagues. And here's 2 reasons why. I don't like hive fortresses, and I don't like the graft tree. You can just say that. Now, I do like fortresses, I do like the graft tree. But if a player says, I'm playing less, and gives reasons why, that's information that GGG can take with them. That's a story that GGG can take with them. And for us as a community, by the way, that's something that we as community members can actually support each other with and say, yeah, that sounds like my story. We actually can gain traction then together as a community to persuade Grinding Gear Games, hey, here's our experience as a player base, and here's the story that we're experiencing as players. Can you help fix that story? The numbers, way too open for debate, way too open for all sorts of different discussions. Stories can be shaped out of numbers in almost any way possible. And so what you need to do as a player, when you've got a suggestion for a nerf or for a buff, which sometimes from time to do, we do nerf radar and buff radar around here, where I do predictions on things that'll get nerfed and things that'll get buffed. We might bring that back this league as a part of this show, etc. But that's an aspect of our response to Grinding Gear Games as a community that we can improve in. Tell a story. Don't worry so much about showing the statistics and comparing one league's player count versus another. Tell your story about why you're having fun and why you'd like GGG to do more of something, and tell your story of why you're not having fun and why you'd like GGG to stop or get away from certain things that they're doing. So with that being said, let me close this out today by saying one thing that I don't like about Keepers League. This is something that I do not like about Keepers League. Here's my fragment tab. Look here in Breach. I love normal Breach. When I saw that Keepers League was coming out and that we were going to have Breach 2.0, I was like, oh, that's cool. They're going to expand on Breach. They're going to change the way how Breach interacts, Breach 1 to Breach 2. They're going to make it so we've got new top tier bosses. Maybe there's like Uber Chayula, even beyond flawless Breachstones and all sorts of things. Nope. We're going to remove that content and replace it with this. I don't like that. Okay? That's my story. Now, I'm playing the crap out of Keepers League. I'm playing tons. I'm enjoying it. I'm enjoying my 2 characters, limiting myself. Very small number of characters. Don't make 10 characters. Don't do it, Iron, even though you want to. Don't do it. Okay. I won't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm probably about to go do it. What do I have right here? I have new character leveling stuff. I'm probably going to go make a new character. But where's Breach? Like with my new character, level 70 to level 90. Like I would run Breachstones and I would love doing that. It was so simple. You don't have to roll them. You just go in and you invite your friends and you all just run through and then you drop the thing and you drop the stone and it's gone. It's gone. It's not here right now. And so, just like my hair, which used to be here and is no longer here in any significantly meaningful way on the top of my head, it's all migrated down to my face and onto the back of my neck, apparently. Well, that's, I guess, what Breach is. So I guess I'd like to know more about what they're going to do with Breach, what they're going to do with Breach 2.0. I'd like to know more of that. If they're going to take away a pretty decently chunked size of the game, I'd like to know that. And I'd like to know what it's getting replaced with. And I'd like to know that it's a replacement, rather than an expansion, rather than an augment, rather than a tweak, rather than a complement to previous League mechanics. I personally would like to know that. That would be beneficial for my story and for my gameplay in Path of Exile. But those are a whole bunch of topics. That's what's going on around Wraeclast. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. I'm sure I've made mistakes throughout today. Next time I'm going to try and do better. We'll see you next time. And in between now and then, I hope a Mirror of Calandra drops for you.
Thanks for watching that video. If you'd like more information on any of our discussion points today, you can see them down below in the video description. If you'd also like to join our Discord or support our Patreon, you can do so with the links down below. Thanks again, and big shout out to all of our Patreon supporters.